So
everybody's got to give the okay. All right. All right. So we're very, very pleased that Dr. Campos-Medina has expressed an interest in speaking with the Maplewood Democratic Committee this evening. We really appreciate it. And a lot of people don't know as much about Dr. Campos-Medina. She's highly regarded in the state of New Jersey as an organizer. She works at Cornell University on issues related to labor. And we could go on and on and on about the things that she does do and she has accomplished. But we want to hear directly from her this evening. And we're really pleased that you're coming to speak with us this evening. So welcome.
Well, thank you so much for opening this opportunity for me to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Patricia Campos-Medina, Dr. Campos-Medina, and I am a long-time progressive activist, a labor organizer, labor leader, and now a faculty member and executive director of the Worker Institute at the School of Industrial Labor Relations, Cornell University. At the Worker Institute, it's a labor research center, a labor research and training center for labor leaders and for unions. And we are what we call the apply extension arm of the ILR school, in which we develop research that looks at the economy, what's happening, and then make recommendations and policy recommendations to advocates and unions. So I have the privilege of directing a group of about 12 researchers that are looking at all angles of the economy, from the care economy to the manufacturing economy to the gig economy, and what unions need to be doing to create power for working people. I've been doing that for 8 years. Before joining the ILR school and becoming an educator and a researcher, I had spent 20 years in the labor movement, first as a union organizer in the apparel and textile industry right after I graduated from Cornell University, my alma mater. And I spent a year organizing in Los Angeles, apparel and textile workers. That took me also to South Carolina and Georgia. Because I already had a master's degree on international trade after I got my bachelor's on industrial labor relations, the union asked me back in 1998 to become a legislative director for the what was called then Unite, the Apparel and Textile Workers Union. And I actually, at 27 years old, became a legislative representative for Unite and the AFL-CIO. And my first assignment was to pass the bill to raise the minimum wage from $5.15 to $7.25, which is what still it is today. And it took us 5 years until 2001, when we finally were able to get the minimum wage. And I tell the story all the time of how every Monday morning we used to go to meet with Senator Kennedy, because that was his last accomplishment, to write that bill and get it done. And I'm very proud of the fact that we will sit around and count votes and see who we had to go get and what we needed to do in the field to get it done. And then counting votes with Nancy Pelosi and trying to figure out what other legislation we needed to do. So I've been in the trenches of passing legislation and figuring out how to build field power to get policy done for working people. I tell people, if I am elected the next United States Senator for New Jersey, I will go back to to Congress and pass the next increase on the federal minimum wage, which at this point should be $17 an hour. And that's a promise. After a whole period doing legislation in Washington, D.C., I was asked in 2004 to come to New Jersey to lead a political campaign to solve the strike in Atlantic City. If you remember, 2004, there was Atlantic City went on strike with 14,000 workers. Local 54 was very weak politically at that point. At that point, I felt like I was more effective building legislative campaigns outside of the Beltway. I come from a small union in which we would build power by organizing. So the power was in the field, was not in DC. So I came to New Jersey and organized a political campaign for 6 weeks, and we won that strike in 2004. And needless to say, that's where I met my husband, and I became a Jersey girl after that. And ever since I came to New Jersey, I became right after the state director for Unite Here, the Hotel and Restaurant Workers Union, which had just merged with the Apparel and Textile Workers Union, and I became the state director for a union of 30,000 workers. So my activism from 2004 has always been around how do you build power for working people? How do you pass legislation federally and locally that advances the power of unions and that advances the power of working people to have good jobs and to have access to paid family leave, paid sick leave, and protections of sexual harassment, safety on the job, and all the critical things that workers need to have a life of dignity. So I joined the New Jersey Working Families Board, and I'm proud to say that I was there when Ana Lilia Mejia led the New Jersey Working Families, and we began the campaign to fight for 15, and all the campaigns that New Jersey Working Families has led. I also am a member of the New Jersey Citizen Action, and I became their PAC board for many years, and I was responsible for, making sure that New Jersey Citizen Action had a proactive legislative and political strategy. I also joined Latina Civic and created Latina Civic PAC, which is an arm of Latina Civic Foundation to train progressive Latinas to run for office. And I became a board member of the Center for American Women in Politics to actually facilitate the training. And we had trained over 1,000 women, Latinas, to run for office. And the reason we did that is because we have very low levels of Latino representation in New Jersey, and it's shameful. And we have 21% of the population, and our political representation was at 9% when I came in 24, and has gone down to 7%. And for Latinas, it's 5%. And it's unacceptable to me as a leader that we were allowing that to happen. So from the beginning of founding Latina Civic PAC, I was a sound critique of the line, of the county line. And I was a member of the New Jersey Working Families when we decided to join the first lawsuit. I also spoke loud and clear every time about the line. And I actually we made as a board a decision that 75% of our PAC was going to go towards supporting Latinas running off the line, because we knew that we needed to challenge the line each and every time if we were going to open opportunities for Latinas to run. Were they successful? Most of them at the local level, we had some successes, but at the legislative level, we didn't. So I'm telling you that story because I think there is a lot of gaslighting going around about who actually led the fight to end the line in this state. It was women and women of color that ran against the line over and over again, and organizations like Latina Civic PAC who actually fought and put our political credibility on the line and our money to fight the line, like all of you did in Maplewood. And so that's my background. Why did I decide to jump into this race? In January 3rd, I started thinking about it right after Menendez's indictment came. But I am a working woman. I had to make my conversations, and I actually had to take a leave from my university in order to be able to run for office. And fundamentally, the reason why I ran is because at that moment, there was a woman on the race, which I believe was the anathema of what we needed to have in this election. We needed to have a woman on the race, but we also needed to have someone who had a history of fighting for working people, not another millionaire. We also needed a woman who has a history of fighting for reproductive justice for women of color. We needed a woman who had a record of fighting for working families, for the issues that family cares about. And we needed a woman of color, I'll be frankly. If we were going to lose another representative of the Latino community, we actually needed to have another Latino run. And I spent a lot of time figuring out who else could do it. And at some point, somebody told me, well, you're the one who raises money for everybody. Why don't you run? And at that point, I said, you know what? I have run campaigns for everybody. I work for Cory Booker. I work for Corsign. I work for so many campaigns. I've been a campaign manager, I fundraise money, and I think I could do it. So that's what I jumped in, because fundamentally, in this moment of great economic anxiety, we need somebody who fights for working people. I have raised money for politicians as a labor leader. I have raised PAC for politicians. I have trained union members to go canvass for politicians, and each and every time they disappoint. Career politicians disappoint, and I will expect. And my biggest critique of Andy Kim is that I helped him win that race in the South. We took union members. He made a commitment to do Medicare for all. He made a commitment to fight, and he did not. He went to Congress and became a career politician. So at this point, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. He is not a progressive Democrat. The only progressive Democrat on this race is me. The only thing he did, he took the anti-Tammy fervor for himself, and then he took the anti-Lyme fervor for himself. I think that I am on this race to continue to hold him accountable to progressive values and to continue to hold the line on what working families need. Democrats, working class Democrats, need a fighter. They need another Bernie Sanders to actually fight for their issues. They do not need another Democrat telling them that what we need is to get along with Republicans. What we get out of getting along with Republicans is more of the same. No action on Medicare for all, no action on student debt relief, which Andy Kim voted against before, and no action on trying to actually resolve the housing crisis that we have in this state. So I am being very honest because I know all of you. I've been in the trenches with all of you. We have fought in many battles together. And what I'm telling you is what my job in this race right now is to make sure that we focus on issues, because that's what I did since I entered this race. Nobody was talking labor issues until I joined, and all of a sudden Andy Kim and Tammy Murphy show up at a Starbucks strike or another strike. Nobody was talking about Medicare for all until I started talking about Medicare for all, and all of a sudden everybody's for Medicare for all. Nobody was talking about student debt relief until I said I went to college with student loans, and it took me 30 years to pay them, and I only have $40,000 on student loans. A lot of kids today have $150,000, $200,000 in student debt, and it's reprehensible that we have not taken action to forgive their debt. So that's what I will do if I go to the United States Senate. And as a union organizer, I stick to my guns. I organize, I build power, I build coalitions, and finally I make a deal. But by the time we get to a deal, the political power will be more on my side than on the Republican side, and that's what I'm committed. I'm saying I'll be the Tia Patricia, a replacement for Tio Bernie and Bernie Sanders in the United States Senate. Thank you. We Latinos used to call Bernie Sanders Tio Bernie, so everybody's calling me Tia Patricia now.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. So can we open it up to questions, Dr. Campos-Medina? Is that okay? So one thing I want to say too is I was reminded when you were speaking, my grandmother, who was an immigrant, was a member of the Hotel Workers Union. And as you're speaking, I'm remembering all of my grandparents are union members. So I'm really glad to hear, what you're telling us today, and that you are stepping up and fighting this fight for everybody. My question before we go to other people is, I know it seems as though your first priority would be to raise the minimum wage to $17 an hour, which I think is fantastic. If I'm correct, what is your second priority?
To fight for the PRO Act. That's the bill, that's the pro-union bill that will force corporations to actually negotiate a collective bargaining agreement within 30 days of a union election, and then put other conditions that we actually hold corporations accountable for not getting to a collective bargaining agreement. Right now, we have not had reform of our labor rights since it was enacted in the 1930s. And the provisions of the NLRA are more applicable to the industrial and manufacturing economy than to a service economy and gig economy. So we have a lot of reform to do in the National Labor Relations Act, including something that I did here in New Jersey, which is to expand the labor rights for domestic workers. We got it done here. I was the key advisor and drafter of that legislation. And there is a federal legislation to expand coverage of labor right protections or union protections to domestic workers at the federal level. So that's another priority that I will do. And remember, most domestic workers are doing home care or childcare work. So.
Yeah. All right, thank you. So we have a question from Shannon Cuttle, who's one of our district leaders. Shannon is going to be a delegate at the Democratic Convention this summer. So we're very excited that they're going to be representing Maplewood there as well as themselves.
Hi, hi, Ann. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So my question, I thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for running for office. I just want to acknowledge that as well. Not many people have the fortitude to do that. So my question is in regards to, if I may say, around LGBTQ plus rights. I haven't seen a lot of platform around that. Could you speak to your LGBTQ plus platform and supporting not just rights within the state of New Jersey, but in regards to abroad?
Yes, I am. One of the areas of the work that I have done at the Worker Institute is to expand the protections of sexual harassment to include gender violence protections against our LGBTQ plus workers in the workplace, so that they have the same protections in the anti-discrimination and employment law that all other workers have. And there is a lot of violence and gender violence that happens in the workplace. So I think it's important that we expand the definition of what who those protections include. So I have a record of doing that type of advocacy and training of employers and even union members to actually be more cognizant of the different dimensions of gender that exist now in the workplace and the different needs that exist for those workers. Also, I would be, I always, LGBTQ plus community are part of who we are. They're part of our lives, of our community, and they ought to have the same rights as we all do and be protected under the same protections that we have. So I will be fighting right along for those rights and with that community, so that they can have a life of dignity and can live their life freely in our society. So, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or anything else that anybody else would like to contribute to the conversation? Becky?
Thank you for coming on, Dr. Campos-Medina. We're so pleased to have you. I was wondering if you could speak about your position on the situation in Israel and Gaza.
Yes. From the start of this campaign, I made a very strong, took a very strong position for peace. And I didn't know because of political convenience, but because it's something that I fundamentally believe. I was a survivor of the war in El Salvador, the brutal war in El Salvador, which was funded militarily through the United States. So, and it took 12 years of an official war and the displacement of 3 million Salvadorans into the United States and the destruction of countless lives, even my community and my home. So I said that I am a child of war and suffer the impact that war has in family separation and destruction of communities, including my own home and my own family. So based on my own experience as a child of war, I will always be a candidate for peace. I believe that the government of the United States and the military, being a military power, has a responsibility to use soft power before it uses military power to contain political strife abroad. With that said, I also stated that the Hamas attack on the people of Israel on October 7 was a crime against humanity. and that Israel had the right to defend itself and go after Hamas and eliminate the terrorist threat against them. But in the process of doing that, we cannot allow them to continue this indiscriminate attacks against the people of Gaza and the Palestinians. And at this point, after 6 months of war, 33,000 people dead, 14,000 children, women dead. I think it's just we need to have moral clarity about what is the role of the United States in demanding the government of Netanyahu. And I tell people all the time, criticizing the government of Israel and Netanyahu for his extreme right-wing war against the people of Palestine is not anti-Semitic. It's just a critique of how the work is being conducted. And we are paying for that war. We're giving them the weapons, so we have the power to tell them to respect, to demand that they respect international human rights law. So that's been my position from the start. And I will continue to speak out for accountability in every war. I know, I mean, I'm not naive that we won't have war conflicts, but in how we approach them, we must first fight for diplomatic solutions. And our State Department to focus on finding political and diplomatic solutions rather than becoming a manager of war. You know, that's what they do right now. They're managing a war rather than looking for political solutions to the stalemate. You know, let the Pentagon manage war. That's not the role of the State Department. And the State Department needs to be managing the war, and that should be a role of the president. So I feel very strongly right now, and I support the students who are protesting the lack of accountability on Israel for how they're conducting in this war. And I think it's just, I told a reporter yesterday that asked me, you know, how do I feel about the protests on campuses? The war in Central America didn't end until Americans started protesting the United States funding the military in Central America that was oppressing people. And if it hadn't been for students in college campuses and good-hearted Americans protesting war in Central America, I will not be alive. So I will support the right of students to protest and remind adults and politicians that we must defend children and women during times of war. So.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish more people would clearly set forth the way you have, that there are two groups of people who have very vested interests that need to be addressed here, and it's not just one or the other. So thank you for saying that. Are there any other questions here? I think Jerry Leventhal has a question. Jerry, is your microphone? You're muted, Jerry. You and Kathy are muted. You're muted, Jerry.
Really? Okay.
Now they
There you go.
Thank you. War in Eastern Europe. What can you tell us about that? How you see that, and where you would stand on that particular conflagration, which is now, I think, in its second year. What can you tell us about your view on that?
Yes, I have been clear from the start that I support our ability as a United States government to support the people of Ukraine in defending their democracy against a foreign invasion on Russia. The role of the United States government around the world has always been to fight for democracy and democracy building efforts around the world. And that's what we're doing in Ukraine. We're supporting the people of Ukraine in defending their democracy against a foreign invasion. And we actually have to hold Russia accountable, because Russia is, at this point, they're an authoritarian state focused on destroying the stability of our NATO allies and the NATO coalition in Europe. And also, they are a destabilizing force in the Middle East and in Africa. So I think that we need to get back to a detent, and this is getting my foreign policy stuff here. We need to get, in which we are able to hold Russia back. I think that they got emboldened with Donald Trump, and now they're trying to expand their influence in Europe. So I am fully supportive of helping the people of Ukraine stand for their democracy, not sending troops ourselves, because we cannot commit our troops to another prolonged war, but in continue to support the people of Ukraine in the defense of their democracy.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. All right. Are there any other questions from anybody else on the call? I don't see any other ones. Dr. Campos-Medina, we really appreciate you being here with us this evening. And it's been a pleasure for me to learn more about you, because I've never met you before. So thank you very much. If there's anything else you want to leave with us, in parting, we would greatly appreciate it.
Just to ask you for your support, if you are not, if you're still open to supporting a true progressive champion, a woman for office. We had never had a woman go to United States Senate. We had never had a Latina go to United States Congress, and we never had a Latina run for statewide office, which is, I always said that it matters. It matters that you have people like me that come from the working class, from the daughter of a janitor, a hotel housekeeper, for other kids of a nurse, of a teacher, to see that you don't have to be a billionaire, or have Wall Street money to run for office. And my call is, if you are willing to support a woman, a progressive woman with a record of accomplishments, I think that just because I haven't been in office doesn't mean that I haven't led in policy solutions, in drafting bills and getting them elected. I know the legislative process, and I know what it takes to get legislation. I know what it takes to get to an agreement. So I am willing, I am ready to do that work. And I'm also ready to fight for workers and for women's reproductive freedom. I've been very clear that what we need in the United States Senate is more women to actually, go back and end the filibuster, to push for an expansion of the courts. The only reason we have 9 Supreme Courts is because in the 1800s, we had 9 circuit courts. We have 13 circuit courts right now. So Congress can actually add 4 more judges right away if they had the political will to expand. But to do that, we had to end the filibuster first. And I'm somebody who will fight to get rid of the filibuster, because it's holding us back, not just on reproductive justice, but also on so many critical issues that this activist conservative court is acting and taking our liberties away. Also, I will vote for ethics reforms, so that our judges are not wine and dine by billionaires while they take our rights away. And I will vote to a removal of Clarence Thomas, because I think he's actually somebody who we have proof that he is not acting in an ethical way. And you actually need a woman to actually go fight for these issues and to stand for our reproductive freedom. So if you are interested in supporting me, or if you have some time, I hope you can visit my website, patricia4senate.com. Follow me on my social media, Patricia4NJ, and I'll be having opportunities there for people to help me get the word out. And I said, at this point, everybody assumes Sandy King is the winner, because he raised $7 million. For a first-time runner, somebody who just has my Rolodex, I'm right there with. I did very well for the first quarter, but I am going against what happens to women all the time. And you can check the statistics at the Center for American Women in Politics. For every dollar a man gets, for every $10 a man gets, a woman gets $1. So I am right there in facing the limitations of a political system that rewards long-term career politicians and men. And with all respect to the men in this office, I think that in this screen, I think that we need to be more conscious about supporting women for elected office who are qualified. And I just ask you to do that. I have 3 degrees. I've been on the trenches. I am qualified to be a United States Senator, and I hope that the people of New Jersey see that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. I know we said that there were no more questions, but Becky does have one more.
Is it okay
A
if
couple
I
of
have
minutes.
one more question?
Is that okay?
Yes, yes.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't think to ask this before, but you spoke about reproductive rights, and I know in the state of New Jersey where our reproductive rights are relatively safe, but that's not so in a lot of the country. And I'm just asking what you would do as a United States Senator to make sure that women throughout the country have reproductive rights.
Well, I think that we need to move to codify our reproductive rights. This is something that we asked during the Obama years to get done, to codify. And I think every time we never thought we were going to have Roe versus Wade removed. So the Democrats never pushed for codifying our reproductive rights and reproductive freedoms. So I think we need to get the majority, get more progressive women elected to office, more progressive leaders elected to office, and we actually need to codify our rights in our Constitution. We've done it before with the end of slavery and the 14th Amendment, and we gotta, and the right to vote for women, we actually have to codify it into law. And that's what we're trying to do here in New Jersey, right? So, and also we need to also fund reproductive health care for poor women and for working class women, because people forget that even if we have the rights in New Jersey, if you don't have access to health care, you don't have reproductive freedom. And in New Jersey, we do have pretty good funding of some of those projects, but not everybody gets it. So nationally, we need to do more to actually fund reproductive health care directly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Becky. And thank you again, Dr. Campos-Medina. We really appreciate your spending some time with us this evening. And we appreciate Aileen, who's connected us and, kept us all on board with getting this scheduled. So thank you, Aileen, also.
Okay. Thank you so much. And let's get people to vote. That's what I said. At the end of the day, we cannot let Donald Trump win. We have to re-elect Biden. So,
yep.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye.
good
Thank
night.
you for coming. Have a good night.
Good night.